Oh, my goodness. Here we are at the next episode of the next thrilling part of the chapter of the installment of the legends of the Jews. Abraham among the Philistines. Glad to see you again, folks. Hold on to your seats. The destruction of Sodom induced Abraham to journey to Gerar. Accustomed to extend hospitality to travelers and wayfarers, he no longer felt comfortable in a district in which all traffic had ceased by reason of the ruined cities. There was another reason for Abraham's leaving his place. The people spoke too much about the ugly incident with Lot's daughters. Arrived in the land of the Philistines, he again, as aforetime in Egypt, came to an understanding with Sarah that she was to call herself his sister. When the report of her beauty reached the king, he ordered her to be brought before him, and he asked her who her companion was. And she told him that Abraham was her brother. Entranced by her beauty, Abimelech the king took Sarah to wife and heaped marks of honor upon Abraham in accordance with the just claims of a brother of the queen. Toward evening, before retiring, while he was still seated upon his throne, Abimelech fell into a sleep, and he slept until the morning. And in the dream he dreamed, he saw an angel of the Lord raising his sword to deal him a death blow. Sore frightened, he asked the cause, and the angel replied, "Thou wilt die on account of the woman thou didst take into thy house this day, for she is the wife of Abraham, the man whom thou didst cite before thee. Return his wife unto him. But if thou restore her not, thou shalt surely die, thou and all that are thine." In that night the voice of a great crying was heard in the whole land of the Philistines, for they saw the figure of a man walking about with a sword in hand, slaying all that came in his way. At the same time it happened that in men and beasts alike all the apertures of the body closed up, and the land was seized with indescribable excitement. In the morning, when the king awoke in agony and terror, he called his servants and told his dream in their ears. One of their number said, "O Lord and King, restore this woman unto the man, for he is her husband. It is but his way in a strange land to pretend that she is his sister. Thus he did with the king of Egypt too. And God sent heavy afflictions upon Pharaoh when he took the woman unto himself. Consider also, O Lord and King, what hath befallen this night in the land. Great pain, wailing, and confusion there was. And we know that it came upon us only because of this woman." There were some among his servants who spake, "Be not afraid of dreams. What dreams make known to man is but falsehood." Then God appeared unto Abimelech again and commanded him to let Sarah go free, otherwise he would be a dead man. Abimelech replied, "Is this thy way? Then I ween the generation of the flood and the generation of the confusion of tongues were innocent too. The man himself did say unto me, She is my sister, and she even herself said, He is my brother. And all the people of their household said the same words. And God said unto him, Yea, I know that thou hast not yet committed a trespass, for I withheld thee from sinning. Thou didst not know that Sarah was a man's wife. But it is becoming to question a stranger. No sooner does he set foot upon thy territory about the woman accompanying him, whether she be his wife or his sister." Abraham, who is a prophet, knew beforehand the danger to himself if he revealed the whole truth. But being a prophet, he also knows that thou didst not touch his wife, and he shall pray for thee, and thou shalt live. The smoke was still rising from the ruins of Sodom, and Abimelech and his people, seeing it, feared that a like fate might overtake them. The king called Abraham and reproached him for having caused such a great misfortune through his false statements concerning Sarah. Abraham excused his conduct by his apprehension that the fear of God not being in the place, the inhabitants of the land slay him for his wife. Abraham went on and told the history of his whole life. And he said, when I dwelt in the house of my father, the nations of the world sought to do me harm. But God proved himself my Redeemer. When the nations of the world tried to lead me astray to idolatry, God revealed himself to me. And he said, get thee out of thy country, and from thy kindred, and from thy father's house. And when the nations of the world were about to go astray, God sent two prophets, my kinsmen Shem and Eber, to admonish them. Admonishment to them. Abimelech gave rich gifts to Abraham. Bling! Wherein he acted otherwise than Pharaoh in similar circumstances. The Egyptian king gave gifts to Sarah, but Abimelech was God-fearing and desired that Abraham pray for him. To Sarah he gave a gauzy robe that covered her whole person, hiding her seductive charms from the view of beholders. Think about it. At the same time, it was a reproach to Abraham that he had not fitted Sarah out with the splendor due to his wife. Though Abimelech had done him great injury, Abraham not only granted him the forgiveness he craved, but also he prayed for him to God. Thus he is an exemplar unto all. Man should be pliant as a reed, not hard like the cedar. He should be easily appeased and slow to anger, and as soon as he who has sinned against him asks for pardon, he should forgive him with all his heart, even if deep and serious injury has been done to him. He should not be vengeful, nor bear his brother a grudge in his heart. Abraham prayed thus for Abimelech, O Lord of the world, thou hast created man that he may increase and propagate his kind. Grant that Abimelech and his house may multiply and increase. God fulfilled Abraham's petition in behalf of Abimelech and his people, and it was the first time it happened in the history of mankind that God fulfilled the prayer of one human being for the benefit of another. That was the first time it happened right there. There it is, folks. You saw it first here. Abimelech and his subjects were healed of all their diseases, and so efficacious was the prayer offered by Abraham that the wife of Abimelech, barren hitherto, bore a child, the birth of Isaac. When the prayer of Abraham for Abimelech was heard, and the king of the Philistines recovered, the angels raised a loud cry and spoke to God thus, O Lord of the world, all these years hath Sarah been barren, as the wife of Abimelech was. Now Abraham prayed to thee, and the wife of Abimelech hath been granted a child. It is just and fair that Sarah should be remembered and granted a child. These words of the angels, spoken on the New Year's day, when the fortunes of men are determined in heaven for the whole year, bore a result. Barely 7 months later, on the first day of the Passover, Isaac was born. The birth of Isaac was a happy event, and not in the house of Abraham alone. The whole world rejoiced. Yay! For God remembered all barren women at the same time with Sarah. They all bore children, and all the blind were made to see, and all the lame were made whole. The dumb were made to speak, and the mad were restored to reason. And a still greater miracle happened. On the day of Isaac's birth, the sun shone with such splendor as had not been seen since the fall of man, and as he will shine again only in the future world. To silence those who ask significantly, can one 100 years old beget a son? Yeah, man. If she can still look that hot and good looking and stuff at 100 years old, you bet she can beget a son. Yeah. With God, anything is possible. God commanded an angel has charge over the embryos to give them form and shape, that he fashioned Isaac precisely according to the model of Abraham, so that all seeing Isaac might exclaim, Abraham begot Isaac. Yeah, there you have it, folks. The boss angel of the embryos got the order straight from the man at the top. Okay, Xerox. That Abraham and Sarah were blessed with offspring only after they had attained to so great an age had an important reason. It was necessary that Abraham should bear the sign of the covenant upon his body before he begot the son who was appointed uh, to be the father of Israel. So he had to cut his thing first, folks, before he could have his son. Okay, think about it. And as Isaac was the first child born to Abraham after he was marked with the you know what sign, he did not fail to celebrate his circumcision with much pomp and ceremony on the 8th day. Shem, Abimelech, king of the Philistines, and his whole retinue, Phicol, the captain of his host in it, they were all present, and also Terah, his son Nahor, in a word, all the great ones round about. On this occasion, Abraham could at last put a stop to the talk of the people who said, Look at this old couple. They picked up a foundling on the highway, and they pretend he is their own son. And to make their statement seem credible, they arrange a feast in his honor. Abraham had invited not only men to the celebration, but also the wives of the magnates with their infants, and God permitted a miracle to be done. Sarah had enough milk in her breast to suckle all the babes there, and they who drew from her breast had much to thank her for. Those whose mothers had harbored only pious thoughts in their minds when they let them drink the milk that flowed from the breasts of the pious Sarah, they became proselytes when they grew up. And those whose mothers let Sarah nurse them only in order to test her, they grew up to be powerful rulers, losing their dominion only at the revelation on Mount Sinai, because they would not accept the Torah. All proselytes and pious heathen are the descendants of these infants. There you have it. They, they think of everything. Among the guests of Abraham were the 31 kings and the 31 viceroys of Palestine who were vanquished by Joshua at the conquest of the Holy Land. Even Og, king of Bashan, was Bashan, 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 was present, and he had to suffer the teasing of the other guests who rallied him upon having called Abraham a sterile mule who would never have offspring. Og, on his part, pointed at the little boy with contempt and said, Were I to lay my finger upon him, he would be crushed. Whereupon God said to him, Thou makest mock of the gift given to Abraham. As thou livest, thou shalt look upon millions and myriads of his descendants, and at the end thou shalt fall into their hands. Uh-oh. The Ishmael thing. You remember, Hagar, the other woman. Okay. Ishmael cast off. When Isaac grew up, quarrels broke out between him and Ishmael on account of the rights of the firstborn. Ishmael insisted he should receive a double portion of the inheritance after the death of Abraham, and Isaac should receive only one portion. Ishmael, who had been accustomed from his youth to use the bow and arrow, was in the habit of aiming his missiles in the direction of Isaac, saying at the same time that he was but jesting. Oops! Sorry, I was just joking. Sorry about that. Sarah, however, insisted that Abraham make over to Isaac all he owned, that no disputes might arise after his death. For, she said, Ishmael is not worthy of being heir with my son, nor with a man like Isaac, and certainly not with my son Isaac. Furthermore, Sarah insisted that Abraham divorce himself from Hagar, the mother of Ishmael, and send away the woman and her son, so that there be nothing common between them and her own son, either in this world or in the future world. Of all the trials Abraham had to undergo, none was so hard to bear as this, for it grieved him sorely to separate himself from his son. God appeared to him in the following night and said to him, Abraham, knowest thou not that Sarah was appointed to be thy wife from her mother's womb? She is thy companion and the wife of thy youth, and I name not Hagar as thy wife, nor Sarah as thy bondwoman. What Sarah spoke unto thee was not but truth, and let it not be grievous in thy sight, because of the lad, and because of thy bondwoman. The next morning Abraham arose up early, gave Hagar her bill of divorcement, I divorce you, and sent her away with her son. Goodbye. First binding a rope about her loins that all might see she was a bondwoman. That's simple. The evil glance cast upon her stepson by Sarah made him sick and feverish, so that Hagar had to carry him, grown up as he was. In his fever he drank often of the water of the bottle given her by Abraham as she left his house, and the water was quickly spent. That she might not look upon the death of her child, Hagar cast Ishmael under the willow shrubs growing on the selfsame spot whereon the angels had once spoken with her, and made known to her that she would bear a son. In the bitterness of her heart she spoke to God and said, Yesterday thou didst say to me, I will greatly multiply thy seed, that it shall not be numbered for the multitude. And today my son dies of thirst. Ishmael himself cried unto God, and his prayer and the merits of Abraham brought them help in their need. Though the angels appeared against Ishmael before God, they said, Wilt thou cause a well of water to spring up for him whose descendants will let thy children of Israel perish with thirst? Huh? Huh? Would you? Would you? But God replied and said, What is Ishmael at this moment, righteous or wicked? And when the angels called him righteous, God continued, I treat man according to his deserts at each moment. At that moment, Ishmael was pious indeed, for he was praying to God in the following words, O Lord of the world, if it be thy will that I shall perish, then let me die in some other way, not by thirst, for the tortures of thirst are great beyond all others. Hagar, instead of praying to God, addressed her supplications to the idols of her youth. The prayer of Ishmael was acceptable before God, and he bade Miriam's well spring up. The well created in the twilight of the sixth day of creation. Even after this miracle, Hagar's faith was no stronger than before. She filled the bottle with water because she feared it might again be spent, and no other would be nigh. Thereupon she journeyed to Egypt with her son, for throw the stick into the air as thou wilt, it will always land on its point. Hagar had come from Egypt, and to Egypt she returned to choose a wife for her son. Ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of another exciting and thrilling and inimitable, ebullient, effervescent, scintillating episode of a chapter, of a part of a section of the Legends of the Jews, brought to us by our old friend Louis Ginsberg, to you for your edification by the reading cow from another world with bedtime stories, thing, show that this is. Until next time, uh, join us again and uh, hold on to your hats for the next installment of the Legends of the Jews. Until then, folks, goodbye.